Welcome to PIMCO Pod. In this episode, Anastasia Buyalskaya, an advisor to PIMCO on behavioral science, discusses how understanding others' beliefs and expectations can help investors anticipate market reactions beyond raw data. Stay tuned after the conclusion of the podcast for additional important information. Theory of Mind in Markets by Anastasia Buyalskaya, Ph.D., advisor to PIMCO on behavioral science. December is a time of year when people exercise theory of mind to varying degrees of success. Theory of mind is the ability to understand and predict others' mental states, which, importantly, might differ from one's own. Theory of mind has ramifications as far-reaching as global geopolitics and government policy, and as close to home as routine interactions with family and friends. For example, what kind of gift would Uncle Joe like for the holidays is a theory of mind question. It requires simulating his mind, reviewing his preferences and beliefs, and making a forecast about what gift he would happily accept. An algorithm might forecast he'd appreciate a rational gift that would have a positive impact on his life, perhaps some new gym clothes or a book on retirement planning. However, most humans can predict that those probably aren't the kinds of gifts he would be most thrilled to receive. This same principle scales beyond family dynamics. If understanding another person's mental state can determine whether a gift delights or disappoints, its importance is even more salient when billions of dollars hinge on interpreting policymakers' intentions or market expectations. The stakes are higher, but the underlying challenge is the same. Success in markets largely depends on inferring the motivations of other market participants and predicting how they will respond to events. A simple experiment. The ultimatum game. As with many principles in behavioral science, this appears obvious and yet is systematically underappreciated. One of my favorite examples is the ultimatum game, a simple research experiment introduced in 1982 by Goethe, Schmidberger, and Schwartz, requiring two people to split a sum of money, say $10, between themselves, with one caveat: they cannot decide jointly. Instead, a coin is flipped to determine which of the two will be the decider and who will be the receiver. The decider then suggests a way to split the money, and the receiver can accept or reject the offer. If the receiver rejects, then both players get nothing. A classic economist, perhaps discounting theory of mind, would consider this a very boring experiment. The rational equilibrium solution is, of course, to offer the minimum positive amount, say $1 to the receiver, and keep $9 for oneself. Nobody would reject free money. Market cleared, right? Behavioral economists view the ultimatum game as a bit more complicated. If we employ theory of mind, we should consider that people might value other things, such as fairness. After all, wasn't it random that the coin flip determined the other player would be the decider? What if the value of fairness is worth more than $1? In this case, the receiver should reject the low offer. It is worth passing on $1 to enforce an important social norm. Indeed, when experimental economists have people play the ultimatum game, they rarely see such low offers, suggesting many people have a more developed theory of mind. Participants chosen to be the decider generally recognize that the $1 offer would likely be rejected. Deciders don't always offer 50% of the pot, but on average, they do offer around 40%, significantly higher than the rational $1 prediction, according to a meta-analysis from Oosterbeek, Sloof, and Van de Keulen, 2004. A decider with a good theory of mind can predict that the receiver's reference point is probably not $0, as the classic economist might predict, but likely something around $5, an equal split. So these proposals are strategic rather than altruistic. The receiver is less likely to reject higher offers, meaning the decider gets to go home with some money too. From behavioral insight to market strategy. Since financial markets are built on expectations, this ability to anticipate how others will interpret information, rather than simply processing the information itself, is what helps separate great investors from the rest. This is where theory of mind becomes a critical skill, understanding that other participants' mental states, their beliefs, constraints, and reference points shape price action as much as rational fundamentals. Markets do not respond mechanically to data releases or policy changes. Instead, market reactions are filtered through perception. A central bank rate cut, for example, might appear good for equities in isolation, but if investors interpret it as a sign of panic, risk assets can sell off. Anticipating these second-order effects requires simulating the minds of other participants. What do they expect? Where are consensus beliefs anchored? Which narratives dominate positioning? Investors who can more accurately forecast these psychological pivots tend to gain an edge. Markets also price the motives behind policy changes. A central bank hike framed as inflation fighting is digested differently than one perceived as politically driven. Investors who can simulate policymakers' mental models tend to be able to better predict whether markets will accept or reject a policy signal, much like the receiver in an ultimatum game must decide whether the offer they receive is fair. Ultimately, a more developed theory of mind helps investors consider not only what should happen, but also what others think will happen, both of which will end up determining market outcomes. Thank you for listening. That was Theory of Mind in Markets. For future insights, please follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Macro Signposts highlights weekly takeaways from the data analysis conducted by our team of economists and other macro experts. For PIMCO's official views on the global economy, please visit PIMCO.com. The discussion and content provided within this podcast is intended for informational purposes only and may not be appropriate for all investors. Reliance upon information provided in a podcast is at the sole responsibility of the listener. The information included herein is not based on any particularized financial situation or need, and it is not intended to be and should not be construed as a forecast, research, investment advice, or a recommendation for any specific PIMCO or other security, strategy, product, or service. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. All investments contain risk and may lose value. Investors should speak to their financial advisors regarding the investment mix that may be right for them based on their financial situation and investment objective. Podcast may involve discussions with non-PIMCO personnel, and such content contain the current opinions of the speaker, but not necessarily those of PIMCO. Other podcasts may consist of audio recording of an existing PIMCO article, and such material contains the current opinions of the manager. The opinions expressed in all podcasts are subject to change without notice. Information contained herein has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable but not guaranteed. PIMCO, as a general matter, provides services to qualified institutions, financial intermediaries, and institutional investors. This is not an offer to any person in any jurisdiction where unlawful or unauthorized. For additional important information, go to www.pimco.com/gbl/en/general/legal-pages/podcast-disclosures.